The foot-tapping anthems, the beats, the iconic beginnings. Music draws you in. Let's dive into the melodies that shape our lives. A journey through the symphony of your mind.
Welcome to Your Brain on Music, a podcast that asks the question, what really happens in your brain when you listen to music? Here's your host, Anthony Cirillo.
Well, thank you, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Your Brain on Music. Thank you, Jim Nance, for that warm introduction. There's a backstory of Jim and I. We go back to the 70s when I was working in sportscasting, so I appreciate that iconic voice. So every week on our show, we explore music and the brain and how music can impact health and wellness. We have a variety of guests, from neuroscientists to musical artists, and today we are blessed to have one of our Sage Stream artists, Sage Stream, a live stream music network. There'll be a little commercial in the podcast, so don't worry about having me go on here. Let's just get right to it. Our guest today is Greg Whitt. He is an award-winning teaching artist using music to share all-world ideas about happiness, relationships, and wellness. He leads interactive learning programs to creatively connect people in ways that are joyful, engaging, and good for you. When you join in, you feel more vibrant, more relaxed, and more connected to others and to the world around you. With a graduate certificate in Transformative Leadership from the Maryland University of Integrative Health, that's a lot to say there, his programs are actually applied philosophy about how we can live, work, and play well together in community. Only they're cleverly disguised as music, and they're delivered as interactive and engaging fun. So with that, I like to just say personally that Greg did a program, a drum circle. Now, drum circles, when you have other people around you that you could see and you're doing drum circles, are one thing where you can impact the audience. But I can tell you he was doing a drum circle into a camera, and I usually go away and during our shows and monitor who's listening and watching, and if there's any song requests or other requests or questions about drums or whatever. And that, while I was doing that, Greg's program was in the background, but really wasn't, because it started permeating my brain just by being there. And it was really transformative for me just sitting there. And I wasn't even particularly trying to pay attention. No offense, Greg. But this is the kind of thing that, the kind of things we love to talk about. So.
Awesome. I appreciate that compliment so much. When the producer gets sucked in, you know you're doing a great job.
Exactly. So, Greg, welcome to the show. Let's just get right into it. Tell the people a little bit about who you are. We'll start there.
Sure. I'm Greg Whitt. I own a small business called Drum for Change. I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's a drum circle facilitation business. And so I work with a lot of different groups of all ages to share ideas about music and wellness based in old world traditions from the places that I call rhythmic cultures, the places where they drum and they sing and they dance as part of everyday life. So that's school programs, that's personal development retreats, that's wellness outings, that's corporate offsites, bringing a van full of drums and percussion instruments so that everyone gets to be in the band.
Awesome. So how did you, everybody has a story. My dad wanted me to play guitar. I thought we were going to go out as a duo when I was 10. Unfortunately, he passed when I was 11, but at 12, the guitar was sitting in the back of the door in my room, and I picked it up and kind of never looked back. So everybody has a story about how they started and what their influences were. What's yours?
Wow. So I never meant to be a drummer. It was an accidental happening, but I grew up in a musical environment. My dad was a DJ on the radio back in the 60s. And my mom would cut the rug in the living room, cranking up the old hi-fi. She was the bookkeeper for a stereo store back in the 70s. So I grew up around great music, and then played trombone in the high school band and jazz ensembles, and wound up in the choral ensembles because that's where all the cute girls were, and then wound up in musical theater. Then I went off to college and thought I was going to be an engineer, and I gave it all up. And so many years later, I wound up working at my alma mater, and my first job there was to rent out the dormitories for the summer. And we brought in a group of 300 kids for an arts and sciences camp. And at the end of their week, they lined up all the kids on the sidewalk, and they were going to take them into the auditorium and do the big slideshow for the parents to see. And out walks this guy wearing and playing this West African djembe drum. And if you know anything about West African music, it's music designed to move you, and that's not an emotional thing; that's a physical thing, right? So people start dancing, and these kids start walking along in perfect unison and harmony. And before I know it, my toes are tapping, and I'm jumping up, and I'm in that parade. And I follow that guy to the end and said, "What is that thing? Where'd you get it? I got to have one." And so that started my path to exploring hand drumming. So started off on West African djembe drums, and then moved over into some Middle Eastern music, and then music of the Caribbean on barrel drums, the conga drums from Cuba. And that just kind of became the hobby, that became the side hustle, that became this thing that I do for my living for the last 15 years now.
That's awesome. I love how you had one section where I learned that because that's the one that got the girls. So as Billy Joel famously said, he took piano lessons for the same reason. And I got into a band, but I was a guitar player before I got into the band. But the guitar playing spot was already taken, of course, because everybody wanted to be the guitar player to get the girls. So I became the cute bass player. So it was good enough. But anyway,
nice.
So what makes you passionate about music?
I think it's the idea that music has the capacity to take us places that we might not be sitting in, right? The idea that it captures our imagination, that it hijacks our chemistry, that you can, through the power of the playlist, throw on some great tunes that really elevate your mood, that shift your mindset, that connect you to more positive times in your life, maybe. But just being able to curate the things that we listen to make all the difference in how we feel and how we go through our day.
So what kind of age groups do you perform for?
I work with basically elementary school through well elderly. So that could be folks in a senior center, that could be kids in first grade, and most things in between. Although high schoolers are challenging. Not my favorite audience, but we have done that. And that's more of a leadership focus, right? The idea of how does a conductor do their job well? And so we're introducing the notion of embodied leadership and how do you model those behaviors,
right.
Leveraging music as the teaching tool.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about your experiences, since SageStream is more geared toward caregivers and senior living. Tell me a little bit about your experience with maybe with older people, maybe some people who've elders, as well as maybe people who have dementia or maybe Parkinson's or something going on when you're playing. Do you have a personal story of how your music has affected a person, and particularly maybe an older person or caregiver during one of your performances?
Sure. I think back to my time running the Raleigh Drum Circle, and the Raleigh Drum Circle is a community interest group that's been going 22 years this month. In fact, they're celebrating in just a couple of weeks. And friends have been running the organization twice as long as I did. I think I managed that group for about 8 years after I started it, in partnership with the Raleigh Parks and Recs Department. And so at those public occasions where we're hanging out in the park and we're playing drums and people come out and dance, and now it's this whole circus spectacle where the acro yoga people are there, and the jugglers and the hula hoopers and the belly dancers are all coming out and hanging out together. But you get a lot of looky-loos, a lot of passersby that come by. And there was this particular woman who would come, and her daughter would bring her. Her name was Polly, and she would come in her wheelchair. And you would see her daughter roll her up to the circle, and somebody would hand her a drum or a shaker or something. And she would just come alive in those occasions, and she would start playing. And she's shaking along. And then before you know it, she's sitting up straighter and she's smiling, and she's bright and beautiful. And gosh, she had to be 90 back in those days. But to see how music just made all the difference in someone's energy levels. When you get into the science of it, you're boosting the immune system and promoting endorphin production. And it's just beautiful to see how that little bit of music medicine, I'll call it, brings people to life.
Yep, and more of that music science is coming to the fore, and I'll allude to that in a little bit. But And now this message.
Introducing SageStream, a dynamic platform offering live, interactive, real-time music video streaming tailored for older adults. Here's how we elevate the experience. Enjoy a rich variety of live performances, complemented by rebroadcasts and a comprehensive archive of past shows. Access over 100 top artists from around the world, including sought-after talents like Ben Morrow, guitarist for icons like Cher and Lionel Richie. Explore a wide range of musical genres such as jazz, rock, blues, classical, standards, opera, and beyond. Engage directly with artists through song requests and personalized acknowledgments, fostering connections through chat and text interaction. No hardware necessary. Simply sign in with a username and password from any device or smart TV, ensuring hassle-free accessibility. Keep your loved ones connected and engaged, combating isolation and fostering a sense of community. Elevate their quality of life with exciting and uplifting musical experiences that bring joy. Senior living providers offering SageStream provide many benefits. According to a University of Michigan study, 4 in 5 older adults watch musical performances on the internet. They report stress relief, relaxation, joy, improved mental health, memory stimulation, and enhanced motivation and energy. SageStream saves planning time. It is a powerful sales tool and boosts net promoter scores. Having SageStream readily available proves invaluable in various scenarios, such as when entertainers cancel, during health emergencies, and for filling challenging time slots. SageStream, where music meets connection, enhancing lives one tune at a time.
But let's move on to the next section of how we do this. And the original, when I conceived this, I said, we're going to take one iconic song per weekend or month or whatever. And, because one of my artists works with Don Felder of the Eagles, who wrote Hotel California. So, once you hear the intro, you know what song's coming up, right? So what makes a song iconic, and then sort of what happens in the brain. And the premise originally was, let's get a neuroscientist and a musician on that. Obviously, neuroscientists are hard to get a hold of. I'm working on some, and we will pursue that part. But it's sort of, I'm doing that. I'm still taking the same premise and applying it to our artists. So since I didn't pick an iconic song, what is your iconic song choice?
Wow. So I've got one that's maybe a little obscure for a lot of people, and folks may not know the artist, but they'll know the connections that artist made. And so it's from a fellow named Babatunde Olatunji. And I think of Baba Olatunji as my grand teacher, right? He was my teacher's teacher. And so my mentor in the drum circle world is a fellow named Arthur Hull, and his teacher was Babatunde Olatunji. Olatunji is a Nigerian guy. He passed away in 2008, but came to the United States in the 1950s on a Rotary Club scholarship to attend Morehouse College down in Atlanta. And he was going to study politics. He was going to go back home and be a statesman and whatnot. And when he got here, he met all these people that looked like his friends from Africa, but they didn't know anything about their origins from the motherland. And so he totally changed his directions. That became his mission. And he started making some music and opened a cultural center up in New York City. And so he recorded this album back in the mid-50s called Drums of Passion. And it was the very first album to get a gold record in the category of world music. Oh. And so on that album, there was a song called Ajaja, Ajaja. And so Ajaja is the Yoruban idea of the thing that unites us all, right? So think of it as a song about unity, right? And so when they sing the song, it goes Ajaja, and then the crowd responds, Milo. So it's the thing that unites us all, and the response is, we're all one. And so I'm teaching this song to kids all the time now because there's so much divisiveness in our society that any occasion that we can bring folks together makes all the difference. And so the song was great on its own, but it wound up being popular. And the ideas that Olatunji was sharing caught the attention of bigger artists like the Grateful Dead. And so he toured with those guys for many, many years. And also with Carlos Santana. And Santana actually did a cover of this song. So if you go back and dig through some of his music from the 70s, he re-recorded that song that Olatunji had done back in the 1950s and early 60s. So that's my iconic song, Aja Aja.
Yeah. So how does that song make you feel? I mean, when you immediately when it starts playing.
Man, so that song, it starts off with these driving drums, and it's this world music vibe of lots of different drums. We know the modern drum set where one guy's playing all the things, but in the older ensembles, it was one guy playing one thing. And so when the cultural ensembles started to come over from Africa and the Caribbean, they couldn't afford to bring everybody, and that's how the drum set wound up being invented. You had to have one guy because you couldn't bring them all.
Right.
And so when all these drums start layering in and they're rocking it and your toes start tapping and they start chanting and singing, man, you just feel huge, right? You just start to puff up in some way. And that just really makes me brighter and vibrant. And so the juices start flowing, and it just really hijacks my chemistry and lifts me up in some way. And so when I hear that song pop on, it never pops on the radio, but when it
Right.
pops onto my playlist that's rocking around in my CD player or whatever, my my iPod from back in the day, that stuff. Man, I just really light up, and I love the song because my wife was listening to that song because her dad liked that music when she was a kid. And so when I first played that, it was like magic to her.
Wow.
Because she knew I knew something about something that was important to her. And so it was a great connection that strengthened our relationship when we first started dating.
Yeah, and I could see how you get animated just by talking about it, which is amazing, and that's the beauty and power of music, right? One of our Sage Stream artists, Nick DiMatteo, came on, and I asked him the same question: "What's your iconic song?" And he said Bill Withers' "Lovely Day," "Lovely Day,
Ooh.
Lovely Day," and he says I could be having a crappy day, and "Lovely Day" comes on, and all of a sudden I'm in a different mindset. So yeah, it's amazing. I think if anything, people get out of this podcast is please listen to more music, more varieties of music, and start feeling the music because I ask a lot of people because I take it for granted. In my house, we have music on all the time. Of course, I play music, but there are houses you go into where it's complete silence, and
Yeah.
we need to. Music is so amazing, and it cuts through things you never even realize. So you talked a little bit about the meaning of the song. How do you think it is has influenced culture and perhaps stand the test of time?
Well, when you talk about this Bill Withers song or Olatunji song, these ideas that are bringing positivity into the limelight, that sort of thing is powerful. And you go back to these traditions from India, the idea of mantra and the repetition of positive ideas to impact us, and you're creating new neural pathways and biological wiring that makes us feel good. And so why would we listen to the other stuff that brings us down when we've got access to all this great music that uplifts us? And when we're feeling good and we're on top of the world, that's contagious, right? People want to be around that. And so it shines that light on not just you, but all the people around you. Because your mood is making that influence everywhere you go, whether you're stopping at the bank or the grocery store or
Yeah.
hanging out with your
Yeah.
partner or whatever it may be. That is reflecting onto others.
Yeah. Why the heck's he so happy? All right. Now this is our lightning round. You've previewed the questions. If you don't have an answer to the question, that's fine. But I always preface this by saying, in her book, Music Has Power, Connie Tomaino, co-founder with Oliver Sacks of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function, outlines ways where caregivers can hone in on the music soundtrack of their life and their loved one. So in her book, and I'm on the board of the Institute as well, and Connie and I have become really close friends. A lot of people don't know that, Oliver Sacks was studying the brain, but when he met Connie, that's when he switched to studying music and the brain. It was Connie 6 years ago that brought this to him. So the more I hang around with Connie and learn from her, it's just amazing. So she has a whole bunch of questions in her book that I am free to use to spark people's minds about, hey, do I have a song list? Like, if I were starting to have dementia and people wanted to use music to bring me back alive, what would that playlist look like? So I'll just shoot them at you. Like I said, no wrong or right answers, and you could do pass or move on or whatever. So, do you have a favorite type of music?
World music is my favorite. Yeah, and particularly I really like stuff from the Putumayo record label. They're all compilations. They were CDs back in the day, but now there's a great Spotify channel that features their music, and it's instruments that you might not hear and languages that you might not hear, but really joyful stuff that kind of sparks my imagination about exploring the world.
So for our viewers and listeners who aren't familiar, how do you define world music?
I think of world music as non-Western, right? And so Western music has particular instruments and particular styles and forms, 4/4 beat, drum set, electric guitar, bass, keyboards, vocals. It's pretty standard arrangements in a lot of Western music. And that shows up differently in whether it's blues or rock or jazz or whatever, ballads, all those kinds of things, but pretty standard forms. And some of this other stuff is more centered on repetitive vocals and percussive instruments that were easier access or maybe homemade. And so I got turned on to this living out in the desert. The Air Force sent me out to Tucson, Arizona for 4 years. And there I got turned on to Native American music and New Age music. And that led into world music as a genre.
What music did you listen to when you were young?
Growing up in a child of the 80s, like I said, that my dad was a DJ. And so we had all the 70s soft rock stuff that was on and those kinds of things. My parents were pretty conservative, so I wasn't listening to a lot of progressive music back in those days. But the 80s rock stuff, the pop stuff, Columbia House Record Club, 12 for a penny kind of thing. But I was digging on Asia and Robert Plant and REO Speedwagon back in those days, and then moving up into the 80s with Peter Gabriel and REM and even Rod Stewart. I worked for a radio station in college for a while. I got to see a lot of great shows for free, and so I was pretty eclectic in my taste.
Awesome. Did you have a favorite singer or band at the time?
Oh, at the time, let's see. No, not in particular. I was kind of all over the map. I liked a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So I asked this not knowing, so I'm Catholic, but I've never actually sang in a choir. I just picked up an instrument and started playing in bands immediately. But I know some people's entry into music comes through church and things like that. Are you of a particular religion or denomination, and has that at all influenced your approach to music?
What a great question. I grew up Southern Baptist. So an irregular churchgoer because I lived in the country and my dad worked weird hours and my mom didn't drive. So we were at the mercy of good-hearted people to pick us up and take us places a lot. But growing up in a Southern Baptist church in the country, a lot of hymns and standards in that arena. But that really wasn't a big enough worldview for me as I got older. And so my scope has broadened a lot. In fact, I was just hanging out with Unity Church people last night and Unitarians last weekend and some Catholic music the other day. And all of those things are, inspired by traditional gospel music that's really wonderful, that goes back into the African-American history and how that's been able to evolve and persevere. And it's all wonderful. I look for the similarities in the styles more than the differences.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been interviewing some of my artists who are from New York, so they had easy access to Broadway plays, musicals, classical music. Any of those types of things influence you or appeal to you?
Well, actually, I was Brother Joseph in a high school production of Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Yeah. I played Reuben, one of Joseph's brothers, and the song that I had to sing was in a French accent, and it was terrible. But I loved it so much. The harmonies really make you feel good when you get all those frequencies going at the same time, and they magnify. It's just beautiful. And it turns out my wife was a hair and makeup designer in theater, film, and television, and she worked on Broadway tours.
Oh, wow.
So we've had a lot of show tunes. And in fact, our favorite way to argue at home is in show tunes because it gets so ridiculous that you can't take anything seriously. You didn't do the dishes. Oh, but it's your turn.
I love that. That's great. I'll bring that up to my wife.
Good luck with that.
I'll just start singing to her next time she calls me out on something. So that could be tonight. Um, so what about, so I know when I was growing up, there were certain shows you immediately hear the theme song now, you know where it brings you back. Like, Halloween's coming. So if you go da 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 da, you know where you're at. Did you have any TV shows that still stick in your memory, particularly from a music and movies too, from a music standpoint?
Oh, sure, sure. I mean, before I joined the military, Top Gun was a thing, right? And so Kenny Loggins, Highway to the Danger Zone. And then as a kid growing up, I was really into heroes, right? And so there's this TV show on called The Greatest American Hero. And I'll never forget that song. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air.
Yeah.
I never thought I could feel so free. I don't know who sang that song, but I love that song. And those kinds of things were, classics. I love it. We'll even roll up YouTube and watch old commercials and jingles and just sing along with some of those sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of funny. I was visiting a cousin up in Narragansett, and we're from Philly, and she's from a little town called Hamilton, which is halfway between Atlantic City and Philadelphia. And there's the Ideal Manufacturing Company. It's a clothes store, and I hated going there as a kid, but they had this theme song: "Take the wheel of your automobile and head on down to Ideal." And it came to me in the middle of my conversation with my cousin. And of course, I had immediately, she didn't remember it. So I immediately searched it and found a clip and played it for her. Well, it takes us, all of us, right back to Hamilton,
Yeah.
New Jersey. It's because it was hysterical. Let's see. Do you have a favorite song that you dance to if you dance?
Oh gosh, dance too. I'm not a huge mover. I'm more of a music maker than a music mover. But we like to dance in the kitchen, and it's usually some old jazz stuff. And my wife has really gotten into a style of music called exotica, which was the Playboy Lounge kind of thing, where
Right.
it's jazz with jungle sounds, bird sounds, and stuff in the back, Les Baxter and that kind of stuff from back in the 50s and 60s. And we'll throw on a little of that for dinner music and maybe cut up the linoleum in the kitchen.
Awesome. So do you still have any vinyl or tapes or CDs or cassettes?
Uh, I've got 300 CDs in a bin behind me. I couldn't tell you what's in there at this point. It's all been packed away for so long. You rip that stuff onto the computer, and then it travels more readily with you. I was doing vinyl for a while, but that's an expensive and cumbersome hobby to pursue. So don't do much of that these days. But a couple of friends run record stores, and it's nice to go in and see what they've got going on.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, now this is a super lightning round. This has more to do with mood, and these are again questions from Connie. Connie Tomato's Music is Power book. So, do you have any music that you wake up to?
No, I don't. I usually do a quiet morning. So I'm out listening to bird song, having coffee on the patio if the weather's good.
Yep.
So not usually get up music, but when I hit the shower though, that's a different thing because then you're really winding into go mode. And then the 80s stuff is great for me. The Olatunji stuff is great for me. All of that stuff really gets my juices going.
I'm gonna have to add a shower question there. Do you have any pets? Do you have a dog that you walk? And if you walk the dog, do you have any music that you listen to?
I don't. We walk a lot, but no, I don't. I don't do pets. We have allergies, and that doesn't go well.
Got it. How about if you work out?
Oh, working out music? Yeah, it's that drive stuff. There was a collection in the '90s that came out, Drew's Dance Party Mix. I think was the collection of CDs, and you'd get a dozen songs on a disc, and then they would mix them all together. So one just kind of flowed seamlessly into the next one. So I'd get an hour, 10 minutes out of a great CD with those, and that would keep me going for a good workout.
Right. How about in the car?
Oh, the car is really eclectic. I'm doing more podcasts in the car these days.
I hear that a
So
lot.
trying to go learn while I'm on the road. So looking forward to hearing more of yours. And I listen to a lot of Adam Grant and organizational psychology kinds of things, because that's kind of the arena that I work in fairly regularly. But if it's tunes, it's 80s tunes, man. I want to crank up some Dire Straits and who is it that was playing here in town the other day? Jane's Addiction, The Cure, those kinds of things.
Cool. Do you have any music that you use to fall asleep to?
we like nature sounds for sleeping. So the crickets and the frogs and those kinds of things. And the Calm app has some really great pre-recorded meditation kinds of things, some easy piano music kinds of stuff, really relaxing sort of things. And I like that because they take the time to do the homework on what's really going to affect your physiology, and be able to de-escalate your brain for the day and help you unwind and settle into that sleep mode.
Sure. Now, some of these last ones are sort of related and overlap, but kind of more mood. But if you're not feeling well or overwhelmed or dealing with uncertainty or feeling blue, is there a go-to for you for music?
Oh, Billie Holiday. It's kind of that sparse minimalist style, really moody kinds of stuff. I kind of like some of that grainy old recording where you still hear the pops in the vinyl kind of stuff. That really helps when I'm feeling down on those gray and rainy days.
Awesome. All right. Just a couple more things. So do you have any recommendations for further exploration of music appreciation and understanding for people?
Ooh, I would say there is a playlist on my phone that I've been digging lately, and I will look it up so I don't tell you incorrectly. It is Radio Paradise, and their global mix has some really interesting stuff that even I'm not familiar with as an enthusiast of world music, music coming from all over the planet. And so that stuff is pretty great to broaden your horizons.
All right, people, listen to that. So final question, why do you think what we're doing at Sage Stream is so important?
Well, there's two reasons that I think that's important. One, music makes the world better, right? Just in general, listening to music that is amplified tenfold when you participate in the music making, and when you do it together, right? When you're bringing people together, that is wired into our biology. As a species, we wouldn't be here if we weren't coming together for our communal success. And so when we have those occasions, even way back to the junior high school dance, when we come together, it builds relationships and it builds emotional connections. And through shared experience, we create lasting bonds that make all the difference.
Awesome. Well, Greg Whitt, I want to thank you for being on the show. You provided really great answers and made me think more about some things and gave us some things to check out as well. I congratulate on you on the work that you're doing with Drums for Change. I look forward to having you back on Sage Stream live again when we get to that point. But all in all, just thank you for participating in Your Brain on Music. I certainly appreciate it.
Wow. Thank you so much for including me, inviting me on, and thank you so much for the good work that you're doing to bring music to more people.
Here's this episode's tip for incorporating music into your everyday life for health and wellness, brought to you from Connie Tomeno, the co-founder and executive director of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function.
A great way of using music, if you live with somebody or take care of somebody who, because of dementia, gets agitated and has these disruptive type behaviors. Many times those behaviors are a fight or flight, a fear response that are self-protective. And so in order to have that individual feel safe and comforted, finding a piece of music that they love, that they can personally connect with, will actually give them that sense of safety and a sense of being someplace where somebody knows who they are. And that will alleviate that fight or flight response and can calm them down in that moment. So then you can care for them in a way that helps them the best.
Here is this week's listener's musical memory. Hey everybody, this is Anthony Cirillo, your host of Your Brain on Music. And I have a song that I like to tell you a little bit about and the story behind it. The song is called Because He Lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Let me tell you the backstory. So I entertain assisted living a lot. I've done 3,000 performances over the years. And when we moved to North Carolina, I went to Hickory and I met Esther. And Esther became my designated heckler. You know, I have themes for every month of the year for programs. So in November, I would do Pennies from Heaven, and she would ask, well, what's that got to do with November? I say, well, it's National Accountants Day in November. Ba-dum-pa. Well, anyway, one day the activity director asked me to go visit Esther in the hospital after her performance. I was kind of shocked because I said, all the people, and she wants me to visit, and she was in the CCU, so that was even more making me wonder what the heck was going on. Turned out she wanted me to sing that particular song. And I got there, and her daughter was there, and Esther's flirting with me, and her daughter's all embarrassed and kind of stuff. And so I said, Esther, we're in the Bible Belt. You got 1 million people can sing this song for you. I'm a guy who sings the standards, you know, Sinatra, Dean Martin. I came down from the upstairs in my house in South Philadelphia, and we have a picture of the Lord on one wall and Frank Sinatra on the other. She said, well, that's the song I want. So after much bickering back and forth, I sang Unforgettable, because that's what she was. But I told her I was going to learn that song. And I did. And I recorded it, put it on a little CD. I sent it to the assisted living. She was back there now. She had been in the coronary care unit. And I thought everything was right with the world until the activity director told me, well, you know what? She's in hospice. Then a few days later, she passed. And, you know, I don't make it a habit of going to funerals of residents I've sung for. I guess I'd be quite busy. But I went to Esther's funeral. And the song on the playlist was Because He Lives. And her daughter came up to me and started crying. And she had never cried up to that point. And she said, did you hear about my mother's last day of life? I said, I did not. Well, evidently on her last day, they played that recording, that little 3-minute recording of me singing Because He Lives over and over again until Esther's daughter knelt down next door and started singing with me, and then said, Mom, it's time to go. And Esther passed that day. Now, there have been many times I've wondered, why do I continue in the senior care business? I could have made a lot more money in hospital care for sure. But Esther. Anytime I look to try to do something else, I think of all the Esthers that I have been, made the acquaintance of. Lovely people. And I have way more Esther stories, but Esther is the most profound. And she changed my life in ways that I'm still trying to comprehend and still continuing the path of serving elders. So, Because He Lives. Your Brain on Music was written, produced, and created by me, Anthony Cirillo, with original music from Ariel Soul, a great harpist. You can find him at arielsoul.com, ARIELSOL.com. Please subscribe to our group, Your Brain on Music, on Facebook. And of course, you can download this podcast from all of the typical and normal podcast providers. So we hope you subscribe to our podcast and listen to it. We'll be featuring many great artists and neuroscientists talking about what happens in your brain when music is played. Until next time, thanks a lot.